So today we'll be focusing on our CNU webinar, and today we have Renee Wege. Renee is a powerhouse behind the scenes at Datassential as their trendologist and senior publications manager. If it's a food and beverage trend, she's not just following it, she's shaping the conversation. As an experienced writer, editor, and certified trendmaster, she brings a deep and fascinating wealth of knowledge in journalism, publications, and social media analysis to the world of dining. Today, Renee is here to share her invaluable insights and trend forecasts specifically for the college and university space. Prepare to discover the latest must-know innovations and shifts impacting campus dining. All right, so Renee, we know that college students now love any type of global trends, especially the ones they've seen on social media. So as Datassential data shows, Gen Z is open to global flavors beyond Chinese, Mexican, and Italian. Which specific emerging cuisines, perhaps from Southeast Asia, West Africa, or South America, are showing the strongest adoption or growth forecast in the CNU space right now?
Specifically among CNU students who use college cafeterias, so really honing in on that specific population that you're interested in. Some of the top cuisines that trended the most within there over the past 2 years include a smattering from all over the globe, including Pacific Rim cuisine, Middle Eastern food, Thai, British, and Indonesian.
And I find that so fascinating. I didn't even know Indonesian cuisine was trending at the moment, so that's great to know. And so just adding on to that, many students are introduced to a new cuisine through a single flavor, for example, gochujang. What is the next logical gateway flavor for Gen Z that dining operators should be testing or to transition them from familiar Asian or Latin dishes to more authentic regional ones?
That's a good question. And it's kind of hard because gochujang is kind of that poster child and the quintessential kind of gateway sauce, you know, and then before that, it was also sriracha. So we're often asked, what is the next sriracha? What is the next gochujang? Kind of looking for those flavors. So I'll start off actually with the Asian, even though it's a little bit more difficult because again, those two have kind of taken that space over. But I think for more of Southeast Asia and some of the other cuisines that are not as familiar even to Gen Z right now, we can see things like Vietnamese fish sauce, nok cham, that could lead consumers to more Vietnamese cuisine as well. That has a spicy notes, salty, sour, sweet. And then also jiao sam, which is a Laotian dipping sauce. Again, that is spicy, sour, and salty. So that could also help consumers kind of get into that space. We see, especially with Gen Z, Laotian cuisine is kind of on the rise in social media. And then moving on to kind of Latin American things, I think salsa matcha is a great vehicle as well for this type of gateway. It's not typically too spicy. I actually found a version in my hometown grocer that is made with a base of sun-dried tomato, but it's very similar to kind of chili crisp, right? Which I think we'll talk about as well. That one, you know, didn't really lead anywhere. It was kind of just like chili crisp is now a thing, right? And kind of blew up. But salsa matcha is kind of the equivalent for Latin American and Mexican cuisine. So it's kind of more about that texture and flavor, specifically for salsa matcha that's not as spicy. So that could lead consumers to kind of exploring more regions of Mexico, like Veracruz, where that one's from. And then we also see things like ají sauce. That's a spicy green sauce from Peru. That is not too different from kind of like a pesto mashup with chimichurri, because it actually has cilantro, parmesan, and jalapeno. So that can kind of lead people to more of that Peruvian cuisine.
This is my first time actually hearing about the ají sauce, and it sounds so delicious. I definitely would want to post it on any dish. We also highlighted and I guess brought that into Worlds of Flavor, the salsa matcha. So I think just talking about, or the salsa matcha in general, you know, this is a great asset to have and a great ingredient to add to any dish, especially just to add some spice to, you know, a fish night or any like grilled chicken. I think that'd be amazing. And then moving on to some global breakfast snacks. So the push for global flavors often focuses on lunch and dinner. What are the key emerging global breakfast and snack concepts that you see are winning with Gen Z and perhaps extending cultural authenticity to all hours of the day?
Yeah, so I thought it was interesting that, you say that a lot of it focuses on lunch and dinner, which makes sense. But actually, to me, like breakfast and snacks, I think have a lot more opportunity just because they are that lesser meal parts, where I think a lot of consumers and maybe Gen Z college students in general, like, my lunch and dinner, I need my substance. I need to stick to something I know I'm going to love and will be full from. And so I think there's like less barrier of, to try new things at maybe a breakfast or as a snack, like less pressure, right? So great opportunity, I think, to experiment a little bit. And then also, Gen Z loves to snack. We actually were talking about how Gen Z snacks almost as many times as they eat like regular meals. I think on campus, we saw like 13 snacks and 21 meals, right? And a lot of those meals or a lot of the snacks are not actually buying on campus. I think only like 4 out of 13 they're buying on campus. So definitely a lot of opportunity. In terms of breakfast, I was at a chef culinary conference a few months ago at UMass Amherst, and it was really interesting because they were telling me that they had a lot of success with their Chinese congee station for breakfast. And so they actually like had very legit toppings, like my favorite, the century egg, which is definitely one of those things that's a more or less polarizing to people who haven't had it. But if you know, it's delicious. So they had things like that, build your own congee. They even had a made to order Bing station as well, which was really good and out there, I think. We see some global snacks too that Gen Z loves more than other generations. Even just the full list, like most of them are global, right? So I think the top one was hotak. So that Korean like pancake that's usually sweet and maybe a little bit savory as well. And then other top snacks include biltong, fried chicken skin, shrimp chips. Those are a personal favorite of mine from from when I was a child. So lots of opportunity with these global snacks and breakfasts.
I loved shrimp chips growing up as well. They were my favorite. And it's so
Right.
interesting to hear that like UMass had a congee station,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is amazing. And now people are exploring what century eggs are, all over
Mm-hmm.
the US. We actually recently added the tteokbokki recipe to our
Oh,
food service
nice.
page. So I know that tteokbokki has been trending for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be great if CNU students would explore tteokbokki. I think it's topped with our panko as well, so it's a little salty, a little sour because we do add some kimchi in there. So it's kind of like a mac and cheese type of style of tteokbokki. Yeah,
Ooh, very
so that's
nice.
kind of like our spin on like global trends or global flavors.
Okay. I think that is like one of the top Gen Z loved dishes as well. I didn't look specifically into like main courses or things where it would fall versus a
Mhm.
snack. Maybe some menus have it more as an
Maybe both.
appetizer.
Yeah.
Probably both. Yeah, I could see that being a big snack
Mhm.
for college students though, for sure.
Yeah, I wish I was back in college because all of these emerging snack trends, I wish I were there to, try that out with all of my friends too.
Yeah.
So, moving forward, let's talk a little bit about authenticity versus approachability.
Mm.
So, how do CNU operators strike the balance between offering dishes that are genuinely authentic to a regional cuisine while still ensuring that they are approachable enough for the average students to try?
I think this is maybe one of or maybe the top kind of conflict, that a lot of operators have as well as consumers on just that line and that balance, right? Because I think the balance is key. For many of the further out there global trends, if you're talking about if your population for some reason was only Korean or only Chinese, and you knew specifically that they were going to love even the out there things, that's a different story, right? But with CNU, there is more diversity, so you're able to experiment more, but you also still have to think about the big picture and most people, right? So I think using something that is authentic at its core, but also like tweaked just a little bit for bigger audiences, and pointing that out, or trying to be as clear about that as possible. I think Gen Z very much values transparency, right? They want to know what's up. They don't want anything hiding. That is kind of the worst possible situation for them. So if you something like Berea, right, that was traditionally made with goat, but it's harder to procure, it's more expensive, a little gamey for most, American tastes. So, a lot of times it's made with beef instead in the US, right? And so maybe on, the little menu description or on the little placards, saying, oh, Berea is a traditional, Mexican dish typically made with goat. We use beef here for X, Y, Z reasons, right? And then even just using the name of the dish, even if it's not super approachable, and then having like the kind of English equivalent, right? So if you say something like, for again going back to kanji, like you have yu tao, which is like the fried donut sticks, right? Maybe people are not going to know what that is, but if you say like Chinese fried donuts, people are going to be like, okay, I would eat that. So I think that is a good balance. And we saw that in general 60% of consumers value authenticity in food, more nowadays than in previous years. And then among Gen Z, that's higher. So 64% of Gen Z say the same is true. So definitely something to consider even more with this population.
I think that's really important when it comes to different trends that are emerging, especially, maybe about like the tteokbokki dish that we recently talked about. I think it's easier for Gen Zers or, just the general population to explore and understand what tteokbokki is when you kind of spin it with like in a mac and cheese kind of presented style, right? So that definitely makes sense. Now that we're kind of talking about, versatility dishes, Kikkoman is known for its versatility. Can you share an example where Kikkoman products are being used creatively to facilitate a non-Asian global trend, maybe in a savory dessert or a Latin American marinade or an African stew?
So I think soy and soy sauce are probably the two things that come to mind the most for me when you think of cross utilization and just also using across different cuisines. I mean, I always grew up thinking like soy sauce was very Chinese or very Asian, but then was kind of surprised that, you can use it for salt in so many different ways, and also just being a vehicle for marinades, for meat. So even though there's a lot of like American barbecue, or American style meat, having that soy sauce in there for things like your barbecue meats, or even for Mexican like carne asada, it's pretty common to use that as one of the marinades to help with texture and things. And then on the dessert front, we've seen a lot of like soy caramels that are a little bit sweet, but also that's salty. So there's a place, Nobu in Chicago, they have like buttermilk donuts with cinnamon sugar and soy caramel sauce. So you can see those elements. And of course, like soy caramel, I was just talking on a webinar today, is also a staple in Vietnamese cuisine. And then also for things like soy caramel wings, right? So bringing it into a little bit different of a realm there. And then soy milk, can be used in so many different applications. I think a lot of Gen Z consumers are also interested in that like cleaner protein type thing, so you can use it in matcha lattes, which of course are growing and always trending, and a variety of different, lattes and beverages that are all the craze with the youngins and the the Gen Zers.
Most definitely. I mean, I myself love a matcha latte. I mean, I literally just got one this morning, and it's great that you're mentioning soy because we do have some soy milks that we've recently imported from Japan, or
Mm.
parent company. And so we're kind of like funneling that out now, and it's going to be in store. So I think it's like a great way for senior operators to kind of understand that, like you mentioned, it's a more cleaner product for dairy alternatives. And so definitely a great way to kind of implement soy milk into your matcha lattes.
And talks a lot
Yeah.
about, I think, too, like authenticity too. At a point, it's not like one of these new milks that, people like there's claims maybe of the protein or the taste or things like that, but they're definitely newer and have more of that curve. Like soy milk has been around for such a long time, and I keep reading things like, Japanese people like drink so much soy milk and that's why they're, look 20 when they're 60 or things like that.
You start drinking more soy milk, so everybody grab a Kikkoman soy
I
milk.
know.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, and then, adding on to that, given the rise of, dairy restrictions or dietary restrictions, how critical is the availability of products like gluten-free tamari or gluten-free hoisin in helping senior operators successfully execute a broad, inclusive menu of global dishes?
Yeah, I think it's particularly important for CNU, right? Because you've got such a diverse, base of customers. And then, even though gluten-free isn't like huge, most of the diets are pretty small still on, a macro level. Not too many people are gluten-free, but it's also one of those things that kind of ebbs and flows. And a lot of people are finding, I think a lot of operators and people in the industry are finding that it's not just people who are strictly gluten-free trying gluten-free products. Anecdotally, like a lot of the gluten-free, like chocolate cakes and things like that are just so much more moist and more delicious. So people are trying those. I think in general, we have 9% of consumers who say they've had gluten-free foods or beverages many times. 11% of Gen Z say the same, so slightly higher than the general population. And so I think, it's really important for people who do follow those diets or want those options, specifically when they're away from home, to be as inclusive as possible, like you said. So that's great. You guys have the gluten-free tamari and gluten-free hoisin, and you can do so many different things with those as well and combine them with your other sauces to make something that is really unique and still fulfills that need for consumers.
And I guess that kind of leads into our next question here. How does the Datassential data advise CNU operators to leverage a single versatile ingredient, such as soy sauce or perhaps an Asian glaze, across multiple menu concepts to reduce food complexity and labor, which is a major operational challenge?
Yeah, cross utilization and just versatility in general, I think is super, super important, especially now with, those challenges, like you said, tightening budgets, labor forces. You don't want anything too complicated. You don't want to have to reinvent the wheel, 17 times or make something from scratch, that could take just 2 seconds by combining two of your signature ingredients or two of your sauces, things like that. And I think a lot of times we think of cross utilization as very beneficial to operators, which of course it is, but I think there's also kind of a hidden other pro, which is that it also helps people be more creative to consumers, right? If you had an unlimited pantry, like you can make anything, but I'm not sure about the quality of those things, and most people don't have that, right? But if I said, hey, Jasmine, you're the chef and you need to use soy sauce. You need to stretch this soy sauce, right? Like we're paying for it and you need to make that budget count. So you need to put soy sauce literally on every part of the menu and every day part. Now tell me, what do you make? And give me 5 options for each one, right? You're going to be stretching your brain and thinking about those more creative concepts than if you had a billion things to choose from, I think. So you could use it in breakfast, you could use it in beverages and all of those different things. There's a place I found in Denver called Garden Grace, and they have a cocktail named the Lion Tamer. And so it has tequila, an aloe liqueur, and then they also have roasted shishito and a sesame soy agave. So I was like, that's a lot going on, but like, I don't think you come up with those uses unless you have something like soy sauce and you're kind of
Mhm.
thinking, what can I do to make this very ubiquitous item unique and creative for new audiences and new people, right? So I love like how you guys have all of these different like sauce hacks and things to combine what you already have, right? If an operator already has, hoisin and sriracha and all these different things, how can we combine that to create something totally new and still very approachable to consumers? So I love that.
I think, we've been showcasing our sauce hacks at different shows this past year, and we really want to push this as kind of like a concept that CNU operators can really implement into their everyday menus. And as you mentioned, it would make these kind of operational challenges a lot easier, specifically when they have these products at hand already. So
Mhm.
that's great. Yeah. And then you mentioned the word ubiquitous. And kind of leads into our next question here.
Mhm.
What current emerging global flavors in the Datassential menu adoption cycle do you predict will be considered ubiquitous or a new familiar to Gen Z students 5 years from now? So I know there's a lot of sauces that are trending at the moment. I mean, I
Mhm.
feel like gochujang kind of, set the curve. And so
Mhm.
now that, fish sauce is also trending, right? Do you think that would be, one of the more ubiquitous or new familiar in the next 5 years?
I think so. I was going slightly more sweet for some of it too.
Okay.
So definitely like ube and matcha are
Oh, yes.
two of those flavors that could be used so many different ways, right? And we're talking about matcha lattes, always
Mhm.
trending and being delicious, and also having that health halo behind it. Matcha and green tea are good for you. So we actually have those in the running for like our 2026 annual trends on what we're calling new classics,
Okay.
right? So they're things that aren't necessarily new, but it had become cemented in like so many consumers as like a classic now, right? Like if you don't have ube or matcha on your menu, like you're not even cool, right? Like not friends with you anymore. But then also things like hot honey. So I know you guys have like the sriracha honey, which is even probably spicier than like any other hot honey out there. But I love that balance, and so do consumers, specifically Gen Z. Loves all that spicy stuff. So I think definitely hot honey, if it's not ubiquitous within Gen Z right now, I think that has will be coming very soon for it.
Yeah, as a Gen Zer, I can concur. I love sweet and spicy trends, so that's great. Yeah, and then speaking of more sweeter flavors, we do have like this five spice like soy caramel bun that one
Ooh.
of our chef's role contestants actually made for us. It's called the soy caramel five spice ube buns. So it does also
Mhm.
include ube, which is going to be trending in the next five
Mhm.
years, as mentioned. So feel free to check out the recipe. It looks delicious. I mean, I don't know if I can recreate it, but it definitely something that others can. Yeah. So moving on to the last few questions that we have, these will be like a little fun ones for you. If you had to be one Kikkoman product, which one would you be and why?
I'm trying to think if this. Oh, it does say soy sauce. So this my shirt does say come on soy sauce. I dressed up as soy sauce one year for Halloween. And
Mm,
my dog, we found like a sushi costume where we're like donated a sushi costume. And so I didn't wear this. I didn't have this shirt back then, but I did procure from someone like a Kikkoman soy sauce sticker. So
mm,
that was clutch. And so I definitely would be soy sauce. I feel like it's just so versatile, right? It's
mhm.
like everyone's friend, which I try to be. And people kind of cringe at this story, but I still want to tell it because I think so. Imagine it's not 2025, right? Because I think
Uh-huh.
when you're thinking about it in 2025 terms, it's a little cringe. But think about it like 2005. I was in like high
Okay.
school, okay, and like things were in a lot of ways more chill. But we had like everyone in our friend group had like ridiculous nicknames. And
Hmm.
guess what I was?
What's it soy sauce?
It was soy sauce.
Oh my God.
And
Wait,
I mean, I personally loved it. I thought it was
mhm.
hilarious. And my parents
Yeah.
actually owned a Chinese restaurant during that time. So like I literally grew up with soy sauce and it wasn't like,
Yeah.
just as random as it may seem. So
Mhm.
I think I would definitely be soy sauce. Yeah.
I love that, I love the soy sauce nickname. I feel like that's so trendy. Even it's not cringe. I can agree. Yeah, that's awesome. Honestly, I think we did see your photo from a few years back where your dog was dressed in a sushi costume. We
Mhm.
like put it in like our little social like weekly report and we shared it with everyone in the office because we were like, this is so cute. Like your dog is so cute in the sushi costume.
Yes.
Yes, I love that. And then one more question that I have for you is if you had to create a new campus dish, guaranteed to go viral on TikTok, what three unexpected Kikkoman ingredients would you combine? Or I guess sauces in this sense.
Oh, so they have to be Kikkoman products? All sauces?
Maybe we could do a blend, Kikkoman products and then like two other ingredients that you are thinking of at the moment.
Ooh, okay. Again, because soy sauce is just so relevant and versatile,
Hmm.
I think I would do like a soy sauce latte, soy
Yum.
caramel latte with kind of that foamy top, the cold foam
Ooh,
top,
the what is it? The cloud top or something?
cloud
What is
top.
it?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Ooh, what do we
yeah.
think about like a matcha soy milk soy cloud latte? I don't know. It would like
I would gulp that up.
soy caramel top. So you've got like a little bit of sweet and the salty
Hmm.
from the foam that hits first, and then you get
Yeah.
and it balances off like the kind of grassier notes of the matcha.
Hmm. Yeah, I
I
think
think I
that
would do that.
sounds.
Maybe add some strawberry. That I know that's like not a Kikkoman product, but at first I was
Mhm.
kind of leaning like some type of like dirty soda-esque type
Yeah.
beverage with like a cold foam. And I love
Mhm.
the matcha with the strawberry. That's been such a pairing. And just
Yeah.
so I think it needs a little bit more color. So I think final answer, I think a matcha latte with strawberry swirl and then a soy salted caramel cloud topping.
That sounds delicious. And if that was a drink that we could make today,
Yeah,
I
I was
would
gonna say,
be
can you
down
make
with
it
that in like 5 seconds.
make it and ship it to me because I don't want to make it, but it sounds good. I'm actually let me float that around. Maybe I'll get it on some menus.
Of course. Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. Yeah, so maybe we'll watch this recording back and then we'll write it down because we
Mhm.
recently made like a sriracha latte at the office. We saw that as like a little trend on Instagram. So
Mhm.
perhaps we'll kind of, mess around with this recipe again and see how good it would be. I honestly think it will though. The caramel cloud
Mm.
top sounds delicious.
Right, and then it just gets the salty from the soy. I think that would actually be really
Exactly.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think soy and caramel blend so well together. So
Mhm.
definitely a winner. Yeah,
Mhm.
well, I think that wraps up most of our questions that we have today, or all of them. And it was so great to learn more about the global trends that are happening in terms of the college and university space. And I feel like we've learned a lot more about what's going to be trending or flavors that will be trending in the next 5 years. So from the Kikkoman, we've really enjoyed talking and speaking with you today, learning more about these trends, and working with you is such a pleasure. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.